Okay, this lesson we worked on scene 9. Scene 9 is between Daisy, Jamie and Anna. Daisy is the daughter of Emma and Toby, and she has been in some of the scenes earlier on, not at that age, not played by either me or Maya, but played by Leo when she was a child. There's lots of mentions of Daisy as well, so the audience should be aware of Daisy and who she is at this point. When first of all looking at Daisy, I initially and straight away make connections between Daisy and Emma. Because that is her mother, I tried to make those connections when reading through the script. So this scene shows a dining room table and the idea of the family coming together. That is what left of the family, apart from John, who's not in this scene. Daisy is congratulating Anna and Jamie because she's going to have a baby. But she's not sure if she really agrees with it. She's opinionated like her mother, and I'm going to draw more conclusions to the characters and talk a little bit about their similarities at the end of this vlog, because I learnt more as the process went along, and this is our first lesson at looking at this scene. We've had a couple of lessons of looking at the scene. So this is our second lesson of looking at the scene after our gap when we recapped all of the scenes earlier. So when I look at the scene and in its progression, we were directed not to play Daisy very similar to Anna, but the lines are not very similar to Emma, but the lines sort of lend themselves to sort of help us develop Daisy's character as it is. We find out that she's an air hostess. We find out that she's quite opinionated and that she's not too keen on Jamie. She sort of feels like he's trying to dominate, that his masculinity is sort of quite a dominant thing, and that he doesn't let Anna speak for herself or let her control her own life. It's very much his opinion and his whatever he says goes, and I think that's what Daisy feels, even though I don't feel like that's the situation. I think at this point Jamie and Anna have a relationship where they are close, and they are happy and stable almost. Never stable, because that word is used quite a lot often throughout the play, and there never was this steady feeling, but I think it's where she feels the most stable, when she's with Jamie. And at this point in the play, they've just redone the house, they've just built up this trust with each other, this understanding, and I think that Anna is quite happy with Jamie and Jamie is happy with Anna, but Daisy is worried about what's going to happen to Anna if she falls in the same situation that Carol did, that her mother did. What I learnt from the scene was the interaction between Daisy and Anna is very different from the interaction between Carol and Emma. Carol and Emma are two very different and opposing characters, in the sense that Carol, I felt, longed for someone like Emma to be close to, or to have that sort of mother figure from, whereas Emma didn't like Carol at all and didn't want that with Carol. She felt like Carol was a leech, or that Carol was more of a problem for John and for the family. Whereas I feel like Daisy almost feels guilty for all the things that her mother had said in the previous scene, for all the things that her mother had said about Carol and the outcome of it all. And because Daisy was rather an insensitive child, she feels like perhaps guilty, perhaps that she wants to make things better for Anna. And I think she does genuinely care for Anna. So Anna has these characters, these figures in her life that Carol never did, and you'd think that would remedy the the eventual fate that she killed herself. But I think it's what makes it interesting, because even with all of that, the almost inheritance of the suicide, and because her mother killed herself, and perhaps because of some sort of post-traumatic prenatal effect, stress, that's what resulted in Anna's suicide. I mean, I haven't really looked at those scenes in details yet, because we haven't really worked on those, but when we work more towards the end of the play, then I'll talk about those in more detail, and why I think that each character did kill himself in the end, apart from Bonnie. So anyway, back to my initial point of the Daisy feeling guilty. And so I feel like Anna has this connection to her as well, because she is family, but I feel like Anna still doesn't want that as much as Carol wanted Emma to be close to her, but I think she does feel this sort of connection between them, and it's different because it's two female characters. I think that one thing that I find really interesting in this scene is the interaction between Daisy and Jamie. Jamie doesn't give in when Daisy is provoking him. She talks about, there are a couple of lines where she talks about not talking about his penis, because he seems keen to be in charge, and, you know, does he always speak for his wife? And that, you know, it's not all about him, it's about Anna. And I think she wants to make that clear to Jamie. And perhaps this isn't even something that she takes personally and holds a personal grudge towards Jamie. It might just be the way she feels towards men, because in this scene also we find out that her father, Toby, had an affair with the nanny. And so maybe she harbours this sort of hatred towards men because of that, and because her mother never used to trust men. That's a trait that's inherited. Because I play both Emma and Daisy, I think it's going to be a challenge for me to make sure that the characters are different enough so that they're not the same character, so they don't look like the same character visually, but also in the way that they are, by making it clear that it's a new time zone. Perhaps that'll help distinguish them, but also show that they are related, mother and daughter. Now, I think it's going to pose a challenge, but I think I'm going to have to look at perhaps how I deliver the lines in a similar sort of way, with a similar sort of feeling, but not the same, and perhaps the tone that she says it, or the way that she presents herself, because she's an air hostess and she smokes, something that her mother probably wouldn't have done. This perhaps could set her apart, and maybe the way that she shows her status or class, because they would have been in the same class. But I think, and I've said before, that I feel that Emma presents herself as a higher class. I feel like Daisy might present herself as a lower class, be a bit more modest, and especially in the home of her cousin Anna. When I look at this scene and some of the directions we were given, there were a couple of moments and instances where Daisy goes up to Smoke and talks about this boyfriend that she had. Chip told me to visualise the person, and I think this adds to the character more, because she seems like someone who couldn't really make a relationship last, but who seems quite confident in talking about that and isn't very ashamed. And I think that's a contrast into what her mother would have been like in that sense. Also, at the same time as this scene is going on, there is a scene between Joe and Bonnie, where I also play Joe, which I'll talk about in a minute once I've finished on Daisy and Emma. And on the other side of Carol's side, I think is an interaction between Carol and perhaps John. One second. Yes, so it's the interaction between Carol and John on the other side. And I feel like the main pace of the scene is driven by Daisy and and Jamie and Anna. And in this centre piece, I feel like is a lot driven by Daisy and her presence, because the other two scenes are quite slow on either side. They're quite quiet. There is the uncomfortable after sex piece happening on Carol's side, so the not wanting to have another baby and not wanting to feel trapped in the world anymore that Carol is trying to communicate, and I think it shows her downfall as it's going down, and this slowly breaking apart and slowly wanting to leave even more so. And I think that as that's happening over there, it's quite a smaller scene, and the middle parts are more funny and show a juxtaposition, because the centre part is quite funny and quite happy, in the sense that there's a sense of hope between Jamie and Anna's future. On the other side is Bonnie and Joe. Now, Bonnie and Joe and their interaction is also a bit more awkward, because there's been a gap where Joe and Bonnie haven't been together, and Joe has got a new date, and it's sort of a lot less going on, a lot slower pace, even though in both end scenes there are moments when the characters do snap and there's louder moments. The main focus is on the centre scene, and I think that when we're focusing on the direction, because we've only put it together briefly once, we've got to focus on how we can draw the attention to the other scenes when it needs to be, using volume perhaps. So when all the shouting's occurring on one side, the focus is drawn there, but then you can still see the other scenes, what's going on, and understand how the characters are feeling and how they link together. I think as this middle scene progresses, Anna's scene, there is a lot of talk about the past, and I think that it's a cut-off point of the play for Anna, when the past is, where she feels the past is behind her, but I think that it could never be, because it keeps crawling back up behind her and keeps catching up to her. And I think again that could lead to some of the thought processes she's having, because in this scene she talks about how she thinks that her hope is here, that she's got a new baby, and that'll bring her a new sense of purpose and something that'll remedy it all. And it was her feeling this, not someone telling her this, like Carol was told before. And the fact that she's got Jamie and has this connection to Jamie, I feel that this could be done really well and effectively in contrast to what's going on, because I think Carol and John are at the stage where there's no recovering from what's happened, where there's no connection anymore between the two of them, and I feel like it's a total difference and contrast to Anna and Jamie, and they're actually at the happiest or best part of their story or life together. So now I'm going to move on to Bonnie and Joe. Bonnie and Joe are in like a pub garden somewhere. They are seeing each other again for the first time in a while, and it's Joe who actually spots Bonnie and walks up to her. And there's a wedding off in the distance as well, which they reference a couple of times. I feel that Jo's character is the same. She's still bubbly, but I feel like she cares for Bonnie in a different way to most people that she's been with, because she makes effort to come and talk to her. She makes effort to worry about it, and she's way more... You'd expect her to be a lot more, hi, the way she was in scene 4 when she turns up with a fish, but instead she's a lot more awkward and the interaction is a lot more awkward, and I feel that's because she cares for Bonnie and she doesn't want to make a fool out of herself because she wants to be with Bonnie. So she comes, she asks if she can sit down several times, and I think she wants, and she uses that, and she wants Bonnie to respond to that because she wants Bonnie to want her to sit down, to almost, this is like a metaphor for her letting her back into her life. And I think that Bonnie isn't too bothered, but Jo wants that again. She talks about trying to make conversation several times and several occasions. She talks about her girlfriend, well, someone else she's on a date with, and tries to make a few jokes. I think I'm understanding Jo's character in this scene to be a lot more tame, not in the sense that she was ever wild, but a lot more calm, a bit more presentable because she's in a public area, because she's trying to impress Bonnie, but not to make it so that she's serious, because Jo is never serious. She's always quite bubbly and light-hearted, and especially when she's trying to be herself around other people. Bonnie, in her response, I feel likes Jo back, but I think she finds the whole situation rather hard because Jo is quite full on, and I think that she finds it hard to interact with Jo because she doesn't know how to get that connection back, or to be as open to Jo as Jo is to her. So in this scene they talk a lot about Jo opening up, saying, I've definitely told you everything, and that's when she loses it and gets a bit angry. I don't actually know whether she gets angry. At first I read it when she says, fucking hell, I was telling you fucking everything. But Bonnie says that doesn't seem to be making you very happy. And I think that in itself shows how Jo is annoyed, and at first I thought it was really angry, but I think it shows how she's annoyed and frustrated because she's longing for this connection with Bonnie, but Bonnie doesn't know how to respond. And I think that's the way Bonnie was responding, because Bonnie feels like she might have opened up more than she has with other people. I think one of my best and the most the most crucial lines that Jo says in this scene itself is, not you is worse, not you is significantly worse. And it's showing how she's not willing to let Bonnie go. She's showing her attraction to Bonnie, and she's making that clear to Bonnie that somebody else can't compare to her, because even though she's brought somebody else on a date, she's walked away from that date to come speak to Bonnie, to talk to her, to sit with her. And I think that it's sort of laying her heart out for Bonnie, and I think an audience would find it really compassionate and emotional. And I think because of the way Bonnie is, she might not fully understand the extent of what Jo is doing, but she also might not want that. She might not want that physical thing that Jo is giving to her because she finds it too much. She's going through a lot, and all this that has been going on at home with the house, trying to sell the house, but also wanting to keep the house. And I think that Bonnie isn't sure whether she can trust Jo, whether she could let someone into her life. And the next couple of scenes show that interaction and show that effect of that, because Jo is quite full on and it doesn't react that well in scene 10, which we've looked at a little bit but haven't really acted through yet or talked as much in the class. So overall, in scene 9, when I play Daisy and both Jo, I feel that they show a lot of contrast in themselves, but I feel like Daisy links a lot to Emma, and it makes that scene it helps us understand how Anna is feeling in that scene, and how she feels there's a new sense of hope, and how maybe Daisy represents the audience doubt, the contrast between that scene and the other two scenes going on, and Jo in the other scene feeling